There is a legend that the instant Duke Leto Atreides died, a meteor streaked across the skies of his ancestral palace on Caladan.
As the saying goes, a boy becomes a man the day his father dies. For Paul, his time as a passive observer of events comes to an abrupt end during the Harkonnen siege of Arrakeen following Leto's demise. Newly imbued with agency after a harrowing escape from his would-be executioners, he emerges from the crushing sands like a baptism into his stark new reality. Paul's character development can finally begin now in earnest, even as Jessica's own development begins to take a turn. After the Atreides arrive on Arrakis, the Bene Gesserit pretext of politics falls away completely, making way for the trappings of religion. The planet has been under the watchful eye of the Missionaria Protectiva, the social engineering branch of the Bene Gesserit. By taking advantage of patterns of human behavior and belief, they seed a population with specific superstitions and prophecies that make it more susceptible to further manipulation at scale. This belief system, the Panoplia Propheticus, exists alongside and acts in concert with the breeding program, so that once the Kwisatz Haderach has been produced, the Imperium's citizens will be fully primed to accept him with nothing less than an intense religious fervor, as he systematically fulfills all of their ancient prophecies, one after the other. If Jessica's secondary purpose was to educate her progeny in the Bene Gesserit way, this is the curriculum she was born to impart.
With the Lady Jessica and Arrakis, the Bene Gesserit system of sowing implant legends through the Missionaria Protectiva came to its full fruition. The wisdom of seeding the known universe with a prophecy pattern for the protection of BG personnel has long been appreciated, but never have we seen a condition et extremis with more ideal mating of person and preparation. The prophetic legends had taken on Arrakis even to the extent of adopted labels, including Reverend Mother, Canto and Respondu, and most of the Sharia Panoplia Propheticus, and it's generally accepted now that Lady Jessica's latent abilities were grossly underestimated.
Jessica's additional involvement in the Missionaria Protectiva goes so deep that it seems likely to have been integrated into her upbringing her entire life, never distinguished from the standard Bene Gesserit education so that she would most effectively pass it along in full. Shortly after coming to Arrakis, she's able to deftly navigate a religious test laid out for her by the Shadout Mapes. Her first hint that the Fremen religion is eerily similar to her schooling, as if the people here were only given the surface conclusions of the in-depth lessons she grew up on, and none of the deeper insights contained within. These insights are nonetheless well planted, though, as even Paul inadvertently stumbles into this behavior when he chooses his Fremen name, Muad'Dib. This is framed as an early indication of his latent potential, an understanding that this is a significant choice without understanding why. But if this instinct is deeply ingrained into his upbringing, then that outcome was essentially inevitable, rather than unique. Predetermined, even. But it's before all that, when Paul and Jessica set out into the desert seeking the Fremen as allies, that Paul's first challenge of adulthood is set. Jessica is buried under a sudden shift in the sand, and has to enter a state of Bindu suspension to avoid suffocating until Paul can dig her out. To Paul, this is his mother's symbolic death. His first true moment of agency in the universe with absolutely no one to come to his aid. He successfully rescues her, but the experience of doing so without her remains, and Paul advances further into the trials of adulthood with greater confidence. A positive outcome, by which I mean a productive outcome, driven by a rapid assessment of the situation and immediate action. Now, consider this.
The mind can go either direction under stress, toward positive or toward negative, on or off. Think of it as a spectrum whose extremes are unconsciousness at the negative end and hyperconsciousness on the positive end. The way the mind will lean under stress is strongly influenced by training.
Under the framework of duality, the negative and unconscious are both considered feminine principles, being abstract and conceptual rather than measurable features of objective reality, making the wording of this Bene Gesserit axiom absolutely pregnant with meaning. Despite being pulled free of the sandfall, Jessica still remains in an emotional suspension, her character development held in stasis by grief. A responsibility to her son and unborn daughter drive her to continue living, but internally she recedes more and more from the cruelties of life with each passing moment in a desperate attempt to avoid confronting her Duke's death. Her instinct to identify with a collective beyond herself as a coping mechanism is called de-individuation, a drive to disassociate from her personal pain by identifying with the needs of a greater whole, to lose herself in a crowd. The urge to de-individuate is, once again, an essentially inevitable outcome when Jessica's training is taken into account. Though she gives every indication that she's at least not fully aware of what she's agreeing to or the ramifications of her actions to her unborn child, she still rushes headlong into the Fremen Water of Life ritual with the dying Reverend Mother of Sietch Tabur, as if she somehow understands the ego death it represents instinctively.
Experiences began to unroll before Jessica. It was like a lecture strip in a subliminal training projector at the Bene Gesserit school. But faster. Blindingly faster. Yet, distinct. She knew each experience as it happened. There was a lover. Virile. Bearded. With the Fremen eyes. And Jessica saw his strength and tenderness, all of him, in one blink moment, through the Reverend Mother's memory. There was no time now to think of what this might be doing to the daughter fetus, only time to accept and record. The experiences poured in on Jessica. Birth, life, death, important matters and unimportant matters, an outpouring of single-view time. Why should a fall of sand from a cliff top stick in the memory? She asked herself. Too late, Jessica saw what was happening. The old woman was dying and, in dying, pouring her experiences into Jessica's awareness as water is poured into a cup. The other mote faded back into pre-birth awareness as Jessica watched it, and, dying in conception, the old Reverend Mother left her life in Jessica's memory, with one last sighing blur of words. "I've been a long time waiting for you," she said. "Here is my life." There it was, encapsulated, all of it, even the moment of death. I am now a Reverend Mother, Jessica realized.
In her eagerness to disassociate from her pain, Jessica accepts the life and memories of Reverend Mother Ramallo and all who came before her, flooding her awareness with untold multitudes. Thus she would drown out her sorrow by becoming a Reverend Mother herself, a living embodiment of the collective unconscious. Jessica has now become the Bene Gesserit, both literally and figuratively, a fragment containing the whole. Dune's plot continues on, but Jessica's involvement quickly dwindles from here as its events unfold. Having begun the story in soft competition for the role of protagonist, she rapidly finds herself in the opposite role, a challenge to Paul's intention to circumvent the bloody inevitability he foresees in his rise to power, only then to settle meekly into the backdrop of Paul's narrative as it races to its climactic conclusion.
You have loved Caladan, and lamented its lost host. But pain discovers new lovers cannot erase those forever ghost.